at Transit right now. I'm the vice chair of Kitsap Transit, so I'm watching it very closely. The people wanted it, they voted for it, so I'm going to try to make it work. But the efficacy of the amount of money those boats cost is still questionable to me.
Thank you. And Sherry, same question, please.
Well, thank you. At first, I did not support the fast ferry after what happened in Kingston. I didn't want to see a ferry fail. But I have to say that Kitsap Transit did put in a lot of thought and a lot of effort. The only thing I think that they left out is a backup boat, which they're borrowing from King County, but it's only for a short amount of time. I think that this iteration of fast ferries has worked, and it's worked well. And I think we're going now over to Kingston to try to reinstate that service. It is expensive, but anytime you live in a civilized society, you have to pay for the things that you really want, the things you really want to enjoy. So we'll just see what happens, whether they keep the backup boat or what have you.
You hold the mic. The next question goes to you, Sherry. Question is, do you support a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags? Why or why not?
Well, I do support a ban on single-use plastic bags. The reason is, if you go into our oceans and you look and you see what our marine life has to live with the plastic that is in the oceans, it's unconscionable. We as human beings should be stewards of the environment. We shouldn't be hurting the environment. And that's what happens with single-use plastic bags. So, you know, when you think of what came over from Japan after the great earthquake they had in the tsunami, if you look at that mess that came across the ocean, most of it was plastic. And birds, marine life, it is something that we have to deal with. And doing away with single-use plastic bags and plastic straws is really part of the answer.
Same question.
Yes, I do. And I brought forward an initiative to ban them in Paulsville, and the city council wouldn't take it up. They're not interested. But I do support it. I have a very strong environmental streak. One of the things that we've done in Paulsville is we've cleaned up Liberty Bay. Right now, Liberty Bay is cleaner than it was in 1970. I have worked tirelessly, I think the Bullocks know this, tirelessly for environmental issues. I think it's incredibly important because a good, solid environmental policy is also good economics. Good economics is also good environmentalism. We need to be very careful of Mother Earth everywhere. And plastic bags, clean water. What's going on with Puget Sound right now is unconscionable when you have the city of Seattle and King County dumping 270 million gallons of raw sewage into Puget Sound with very little action by state government. Just infuriated me. Once again, I said I was mad. That's another thing I'm mad about.
Okay, if you hold the mic, Becky, this next question is for you then, please. The question is, the chemical Roundup is a known carcinogenic. What do you see that can be done to limit its use on a large scale?
Well, that once again, strong environmentalism. Now this has come up because of the spraying by OPG-ORM Pope up in Hamsville, where they're going to spray a clear cut. First of all, they shouldn't be clear cutting in any of the counties that are required to do what's called the Buildable Land Report in the state of Washington. It's part of the Growth Management Act. We need to really clean up our DNR laws, okay? They are back in 1950, okay? That's one of the reasons why we've been just peppered with smoke, is that we have not kept up with managing our forest and taking care of our environment. No, we shouldn't be spraying chemicals wholesale on forest land. I mean, that's just nuts. And as to Roundup and those kind of things, we need to look at it very carefully. Now, you know, there are other alternatives in agriculture to these chemicals. What we need to do is nail the chemicals and produce solutions that will actually allow strong agriculture to continue.
Thank you. And Mike, Sherry, same question?
Well, Roundup, we know, is a carcinogen. It's been by the CDC. When the people in Hansville found out that they were going to spray on this clear-cut area, they called me. And then I called the governor's office and ecology and that. And then all of a sudden, they aren't going to spray. Maybe not right now, but we have to say, we banned all these pesticides many years ago. And now, all of a sudden, they're coming back because the EPA out of Washington, D.C. is not being a good steward to the environment or to cities and counties. It's really a mess. But until we get the EPA to back us up, it's not going to happen.
Thank you. Well, Mike, Sherry, this question is for you. Question is, having a state bank would save the state millions. What actions are needed to get this legislation passed? And will you work to pass this legislation?
I actually have worked on a state bank for many years. Bob Hasakawa, who is now a senator, but before was a representative, has always believed in a state bank. And because we were sweetmates, he convinced me that it really is an important thing. Of all the states that went into recession, there was only one that didn't, and that was North Dakota. And that was because they had a state bank and weren't affected by the ups and downs of the commercial market. So I very much support it. And Bob has been writing the bills. He got pretty far this year. And hopefully I'll be able to pull it over to the House and work on it again.
Have you said any question?
Absolutely no. And the reason why is state government, right now, you know, there's only 4 states in the United States that have more debt than we do. We're, in my mind, from an accounting, I'm a CFO, okay? We are financially unstable. And I called out the Housing Authority way before anyone else. Now I'm calling out the state of Washington the same way. We have got to be very careful about what we do with our money. And a state bank, the only reason why North Dakota's only state bank, it survived, it was because that's when they discovered fracking. And they had huge energy resources and the most robust economy of any state in the union during our Great Recession because they were screwing up their environment. But that's a whole other story. Okay, so no, government does not need to be in the banking industry. That's the last place. They need to clean up their own financial house before they take on any more obligations or any more programs that I think that they would potentially mismanage.
Thank you. Becky, if you hold the mic, please, this question is for you. Question is, tighter gun controls are essential to protect our families. What actions will you take to support I-1639 or equivalent legislation?
1639 is going to be really tough because I think it's unconstitutional both at the federal and state level. But there's some real gems in it that we need to look at. Some things that could be very helpful. Number one, using the Department of Licensing, okay, to license people that have guns. Now, I've been advocating for this for 5 years, which is we already have a licensing system that works very effectively in the state of Washington. People that own guns have a period of time to take a test, just like you would for a driver's license. Take a test about gun safety, how to store guns, and then you have an endorsement on your driver's license. Now, I've run this past more than several groups, gun groups, and they seem to be okay with it. That they can deal with that. You know, owning a gun is a responsibility, but in the mind of gun owners, it's also an honor. It's an honor, okay? And they need to respect that honor by being well-educated, knowing what to do with firearms, and taking a test and proving that they have those responsibilities.
Thank you. And Sherry, the same question.
Would you repeat it?
I'd be happy to repeat it for you. So tighter gun controls are essential to protect our families. What actions will you take to support I-1639 or equivalent legislation?
Well, I actually support 1639. We have to start somewhere. And 1639 may not be perfect, but it is a start. I don't think we will ever be able to ask gun owners to register their guns. That is what the NRA is most against. They don't want a registry of who owns guns because they think somebody's going to come and take their guns away. And nobody, at least not me, is against the Second Amendment. But we also have to be very careful about how we tighten controls. Now, I looked at the Second Amendment, which says a well-armed militia. It doesn't say a well-armed citizen. And we don't have a well-armed militia except for the National Guard. I think that, well, I won't go any further.
All right, so then let me start with you for next question. And the question is, do you think the Ruckle House... Yes, to Sherry. So the question to you, Sherry, is do you think the Ruckle House Center study will result in any significant changes to the Growth Management Act?
That is a great question because I have been working with the Ruckle House Center on growth management issues. And actually, the American Planning Association gave me an award for working on it. Not trying to destroy it, but tweaking it. It's 28 years old, and obviously our population has changed, our demographics have changed, and so it's really an important thing that we look at the Growth Management Act, not to destroy it. We made a promise to the people that we would have open space, greenery, and that's why the Enviros never put out an initiative, because the state promised that this is the way it will be. So I feel very strongly, it comes to my committee, and I feel very strongly that we have to help counties and cities, but we don't have to destroy the Growth Management Act.
Thank you. Becky, same question?
They might come up with some ideas, but some of the fixes are pretty straightforward. Number one, six words. All they need to do is remove 6 words in one part of the RCW, which says that cities must consider reasonable measures before they expand their urban growth areas. Now, what that does is prescribes ever increasing levels of densities in cities, ever increasing. And so that's what's happening in Seattle right now. They're upzoning all the residential neighborhoods. Okay, they're going away from single-family houses to apartments because of those 6 words. All in it, 6 words. All you do is take the 6 words out. Additionally, the state of Washington should not have exempted themselves from the Growth Management Act. They have assets, they're called state highways. They should be planning on 6 and 20-year cycles for level of service analysis, just like cities and counties do. That would be a huge change that needs to happen.
Thank you. And do you have a challenge card? We do. Okay, so the mic goes to Sherry, please.
To
go
answer
ahead.
the question, right?
I'm sorry?
To answer the question.
Oh, did you not answer the...
Oh, I did, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just,
Okay, so did you want
okay,
to...
yes, I do.
Okay.
The Growth Management, which was brought about in 1990, never said that cities had to fill in the densities. It is a guideline. It says if you can, but nowhere in the original act, which I have, did it say that cities had to fill in. It's better to fill in cities because then you leave green space for other generations. And as far as I'm concerned, open space is like a green fabric that holds our society together. And we know that green space helps people to heal, helps people to feel better, and I think it is a really important thing. But it never said they have to.
Okay, and then, Becky, you guys 1 minute to review.
It absolutely does in case law. I'm looking at chat really carefully right now. It absolutely says that we have to do reasonable measures. We have ever-increasing levels of density that we must achieve. Trust me, we're living it in Paulsville. So is the city of Seattle, so is the city of Kirkland, Sammamish, Covington. We're all living it. Meanwhile, our counties have no sustainable revenue source in order to pay for their core services. This is all a direct result of the Growth Management Act. And yes, it needs to be changed.
Okay, so then the next question, I think, well, I need to go to Becky. And the question is, we may know the answer to this one already, Becky, but the question is, do you support a carbon tax? Why or why not?
I support changing the DNR laws first. Okay, I think that will go a long way. I'm very, very worried about the carbon tax. I do believe in greenhouse gases are impacting our climate. I'm not so sure that just little Washington State is going to compete with China on this regard. But I'm very, very worried about any kind of additional increases in the price of our gasoline. And because if we increase price, it'll be less bought, and we will destabilize our transportation funding mechanisms. I'm extremely worried about that mechanism. The other thing that the carbon tax initiative does is that it creates this huge hunk of money that can be spread out for all kinds of things, kind of. It's not very clear in the initiative what that money is going to be used for. Normally, that's just a pot of money that gets wasted, and I'm very, very nervous about it.
Thank you. And Sherry, same question, please.
I support a carbon tax after I've read the bill and after I have read the initiative. I think you have to read it before you're against it. The reason that Governor Inslee proposed a carbon tax was because we have to start somewhere. And if we have the courage and the foresight to do something that will hurt, I mean, there's no question about it, because it will raise gas prices. But hopefully, while we're looking at it, massaging it, trying to get it right, we will find something that will offset the carbon tax.
Great. And if you hold the mic, Sherry, this next question is for you. Question is, should the share of pot taxes, marijuana taxes, that are going to the cities and counties be increased to support school resource officers in all schools?
Well, that's interesting, because I don't think that we can give the pot money to school resource officers. It is up to the city and the county what they want to do when they get the money. But most cities will get a certain amount of money from the marijuana tax, except for those cities like Paulsville that have no marijuana shops, no medical marijuana, no recreational. And there are a lot of people who need medical marijuana to help with the pain and the lack of appetite and things like that. We did cut the liquor tax during the Great Recession. And I believe that, yes, we should continue to raise giving to those cities that participate more money, and we are working on that.
Thank you. Becky, same question.
School resource officers are out of the police department, which is out of the general fund of most jurisdictions. And I think that school resource officers are incredibly important in all of our schools, if they're well trained. If they're well trained. How that funding occurs is basically increased to the general fund, and that can happen in a whole series of ways, whether it be marijuana tax or just general basic revenues from retail sales tax or a whole series of others. Marijuana, yes, Paulsboro has no marijuana shops in the city of Paulsboro. City Council voted not to allow them. You wouldn't believe how many jurisdictions have come to me and said that they wish they'd done the same thing. The money hasn't been worth the amount of energy and effort for policing and what has happened in the communities surrounding the marijuana shops. I could name names, but they'd probably kill me, but there's a bunch of cities that wish they hadn't done it.
Thank you. And Becky, if you hold the mic, please. This question is, since we're all talking about taxes, one of our members asked, if any, what new tax would you support and what should that new funding accomplish?
I am a fiscal conservative, socially responsible, which means I'm not real keen on any new taxes. What I really would like to do is look at the tax structures we have and tune them, and look at the way we use the money. You know that we went through $200 million in the Puget Sound Partnership, and our whales are dying, and our water's dirty, and they're dumping 270 million gallons of raw sewage. You know, that's like every septic tank in Kitsap County just got dumped into Puget Sound when they did that. You know, we need to be better with the money that we get. City of Paulsboro's had always balanced budgets, and we've actually cut taxes twice. And we have more revenue coming in now than we ever had in the history of the city, because we know how to manage our money and direct it in efficient ways to make our community strong. I think those are the things that I want to do at Olympia.
Thank you. Jerry, same question?
All right, thank you. I'm not a lover of taxes, but you know, like everybody else, I have to pay them. And I really desperately feel that we need to keep funding mental health. The fact is that for years we have not had the ability to fund it because of the Great Recession. But now, last year we put in $25 million, which is a drop in the bucket. We need to fund mental health, because one day everybody here will be affected by somebody who has mental health issues, and there's no place to go because the bigger counties take our beds, so we're left with holding it back. And so I think it's very important. I know that the county commissioners did 0.1% to give to mental health, but I think it wouldn't hurt to give them 0.2.
Okay, thank you. And last question, Sherry, if you would please. This is the last question from the audience. What are your priorities for the upcoming legislative session? Sherry?
Well, my priorities are, number one, to have a balanced budget. I think that's even required. It's not required by law. People think that you have to have a balanced budget, but the truth is there is no requirement in the Constitution to have a balanced budget. But that's the responsible way of budgeting. I also think that we have to continue making sure that our schools are fully funded and that our teachers are fully funded. You know, it's amazing that when I was growing up, a long time ago, teachers were revered because they were people in the community who garnered the most respect. And now we call them the bad guys. Well, I happen to love those bad guys. They put up with a lot. And so that's how I feel.
Thank you. And Becky, your priorities, please.
Enforce the Public Records Act, change the Growth Management Act about reasonable measures, the hearing board. In other words, I don't like the hearings board. Everything should go directly to Superior Court. And concurrency enforcement, meaning the state of Washington should use concurrency with regards to the state highways. I think Sherry's right, we need to have better mental health treatment coming into the local communities, but I think what we need to do is get mental health out of DSHS and put it into the state health department. I think we would have better control, better oversight. I think it's very important that the mental health thing is a big deal, along with the opioids. That's what's really eating our local communities, that and the lack of implementation of the Growth Antigen Act in a fair and uniform way. Those are the big ones. And the Public Records Act, and the Open Public Meetings Act, which the state legislature has exempted themselves from as well. That needs to go.
Thank you. All right, so thank you. If you hold the mic, please. That actually concludes our question and answer from the audience members. Now we move into the 2-minute session for our candidates to give their 2-minute summary. So we started with Sherry, so Becky, if you would please begin with the 2-minute summary.
As I said, I run for public office when I get mad. And there's been a lot of things that have happened in the state of Washington in the last couple of years that have really frustrated me and made me very, like, what are they doing? And because we at the local level have been picking up the pieces. You know, mental health, opioids, you know, dumping sewage into Puget Sound. I mean, and, you know, now we have teachers going on strike right after they did McCleary. I mean, over and over again. What happens in Olympia comes down to us and we have to pick up the pieces. And, you know, I just got frustrated. I think that Sherry Appleton has tried very hard for Kitsap, and I thank her for her hard work. But I think we need to change. I think we need to have different eyes. I think we need to have a better vision. And I think we need to have somebody that has actually made things happen at the local level. And I've made things happen at the local level. Paulsville is strong, vibrant, and alive. I've worked very cooperatively with the county, even at the regional level. As I said, I am the vice chair of the Transportation Policy Board of Puget Sound Regional Council. I understand transportation and things that need to happen. I'm also very worried about the financial stability of the state of Washington. You know, I read the financial statements. Yes, the state of Washington has financial statement. I compared it to the reporting coming out of the state treasurer's office, and I can't make heads or tails. Okay, the reports don't match. Holy smokes! You know, what is our debt service in the state of Washington? How does it work? Those are my skill sets. That's what I do. I look at numbers. I'm a process thinker, and I do things. I just don't talk about them. I actually do things. I make things happen. I am a change agent. Now, if you like the status quo, then you're not going to vote for me. But if you don't, I will bring change, and I will bring new ideas. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Edmondson. Sherry, please. Your 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for all paying attention and enjoying our debate. I would like to say that I am a very productive person. And if I weren't productive, then I could understand why my opponent is running. But even she says I'm doing a great job. And I am. This past year, I got $1 million for Martha and Mary, $750,000 for Morrow Manor, which is for abused and battered women. I got $500,000 for Fish Line and $300,000 for the Humane Society. I'm very proud of the work that I've done. The silver alert that you sometimes see on those reader boards, which is not the amber alert, this is for older people who have dementia over the age of 60. They no longer are in the recovery mode. We are in the rescue mode since we've got the silver alert, and it's working. I fought really hard to keep Francis Haddon Morgan open, and I kept it open for several years till I lost. I am proud of the Medicare for All bill. That really helps low-income people, all-income people, when you think about it. I am proud of the fact that when Harrison Hospital decided to move from Bremerton, CHI, myself and Michelle Caldier we formed a partnership, and we actually got the Department of Health to back off for a little while they relooked at it. We didn't win, but we gave people the cause for thought. And the last thing is, what I'd like to do when I get back is criminal justice reform. We need to do that to save money.
Okay, thank you. So first off, I just want to quickly remind you that our next Eggs Initiative is September 18th, where we have State Legislative District 35 as State Representative Position 2. And with that, we end our Eggs Initiative for this morning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please give our candidates a round of applause for their civic leadership. Thank you all, and have a great day.